The ship hung in the darkness of space, like a silver needle against black cloth. The Time's eternal dawn Times was not the largest human vessel, but it was beautiful in its own way. Clean lines and smooth metal reflected the distant stars. Inside, Commander Tamman stood at the observation window and watched the approaching Valoran warship. It was massive, 3 times the size of the Time's eternal dawn asterisk, covered dark armor plates that looked like dragon scales. Weapons bristled from every surface. Red lights glowed from its engines like angry eyes. Tamman had seen many alien ships in his 20 years of service, but the Valorans always built theirs to look frightening. "They're here to scare us," said Lieutenant Hana, standing beside him. She was young, only 5 years in the service, but she was smart and kept her calm in difficult situations. "They're always trying to scare someone," Tamman replied with a small smile. "That's how they've conquered 17 systems. Show up looking like death itself, and most species surrender before the fighting starts." "Will it work on us?" Hana asked. Tam turned to look at her. His face was weathered from years in space, lines around his eyes from squinting at screens and stars. "What do you think?" Hana smiled back. "No, sir." The communication system beeped. A voice came through, speaking in the common galactic language that most species used for trade and diplomacy. "Human vessel. Time's eternal dawn asterisk. This is the Valoran warship Times Crimson Fang asterisk. We request permission to dock and begin diplomatic proceedings." 1 Tae Min pressed the response button. "Crimson Fang asterisk. This is Commander Tae Min of the Time's eternal dawn. Permission granted. Welcome aboard." Behind him, the bridge crew went about their work. Pilot Juan checked the docking systems. Engineer Dong Wu monitored the power levels. Navigator Minso marked the positions of both ships. In her charts, they all moved with the easy confidence of people who knew their jobs well. An hour later, Tamman stood in the docking bay with Hana and 4 other crew members. They wore their dress uniforms, dark blue with silver trim, not armor, not weapons, just clean, professional clothing that showed respect for their guests. The airlock hissed and opened. Steam rolled out across the floor. A dramatic effect the Valorans probably planned. Through the mist came the alien warriors. They were tall, nearly 2 m each. Their skin was rough and gray like stone. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. Their faces were angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed faintly yellow. They wore armor that covered most of their bodies, black metal with red decorations. Each one carried at least 3 visible weapons. At the front walked Warchief Craxus. He was the largest of them all, with scars across his face that spoke of many battles. His armor had more decorations than the others, marks of honor and victory. When he stepped onto the Time's eternal dawn asterisk, the metal floor rang under his weight. Commander Tamman Craxus said. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel falling down a mountain. "I am Warchief Craxus of the Valorian Empire. I come to speak terms of potential alliance between our peoples." Tamman stepped forward and extended his hand in the human greeting. Craxus looked at the hand for a moment, then reached out with one of his forearms. His hand swallowed Tamman's completely. They shook, and Tamman noticed the surprise in the alien's eyes. "Humans gripped harder than most species. Expected, welcome to the times eternal. Dawn asterisk Wararkeef, Tamman said. Warmly, we're an LT Uncan GT, honored by your visit. Please let me introduce my crew. He gestured to each person in turn. Hana, who nodded politely. Officer. Subin, a calm woman with gray hair who had been a doctor for 30 years, security. Chief Hunwoo, a quiet man with watchful eyes, communications. Officer Young, young and friendly. Engineer Dongwoo, who still had grease on his hands from working on the ship. Systems, the Valorans studied each human. Carefully, they were clearly trying to assess these strange beings. Humans were small compared to Valorans. Barely reaching their chests, humans had only 2 arms, not 4. Humans looked soft with skin that seemed fragile and bodies that seemed weak. Tamman could see the calculations in Kraxus's eyes. The Wararkeef was thinking what most warrior species thought when they first met humans. These creatures cannot be dangerous. We have prepared quarters for you and your team. Tamman said. You must be tired from your journey. Would you like to rest before we begin our talks? Kraxus straightened his posture, becoming rigid. Valoran warriors do not tire from simple travel. We are ready to begin immediately. Of course, Tamman said, not bothered by the response. He had expected it. Warrior species always wanted to seem strong and tireless. However, there is one thing. Our talks are scheduled for 800 hours tomorrow morning. That's about 10 hours from now in your time measurement. Why the delay? Asked one of the other Valorans, a scarred female named Thexer. We are here now because it's evening by our ship's schedule, Tamman explained. We keep our days matched to Earth Standard Time, helps the crew stay healthy, and besides, he smiled, 80. 0 is breakfast time. I thought we could share a meal as a gesture of goodwill. Break bread together, as we say on Earth. The Valorans looked at each other. Sharing meals was not part of their diplomatic tradition. Valoran warriors ate nutrient paste before battles to fuel their bodies efficiently. They feasted only after victories, consuming the best food from conquered worlds. Eating was not a social activity, it was fuel or celebration. Nothing in between, but this was human territory and they were here to learn about human customs. This is acceptable, Kraxus said slowly. We will attend your breakfast. Excellent. Tamman's smile grew wider. I'll have our kitchen staff prepare something special. Now let me show you to your quarters. We'll meet in the main observation deck at 80. 0. As they walked through the corridors of the times eternal dawn asterisk, the Valorans noticed how plain everything was. Human ships were not decorated for intimidation. The walls were simple gray metal with white lights. Crew members passed by in regular uniforms, nodding greetings to the aliens without fear or excessive respect. It was all very casual, very normal. One young human, barely 20 years old actually, bumped into Kraxus while carrying a box of supplies. Oh, sorry about that, sir, the young man said cheerfully, then continued on his way without waiting for a response. Thexer leaned close to Kraxus and whispered in their own language. They show no clears throat fear. Either they are very brave or very foolish, Kraxus said. Nothing. He was thinking about the human commander's grip. It had been stronger than expected, much stronger, and the way the other humans moved through their ship with such ease and confidence, it was different from other species they had met, but surely these small, soft creatures could not be a real threat. They had conquered their systems through technology and luck, the Valoran intelligence report said, not through strength or warrior skill. Tomorrow's breakfast would be interesting. The Valorans would observe these humans more carefully. They would learn the truth about the species that called themselves Starforged. They would learn, though they did not know it yet, that truth can be more surprising than any fiction. The Valoran warriors did not sleep much. Their species needed only 4 hours of rest per day cycle, and they spent most of the night in their quarters discussing the humans they had met. Craxus reviewed intelligence reports on his data pad while Thexer and the others maintained their weapons and armor. The reports say humans are technologically advanced but physically weak, Thexer said, running a cleaning cloth along her blade. They evolved on a planet with standard gravity and atmosphere, nothing special. They should be like the Dairy or the Helios, soft, dependent on machines, yet they hold 43 systems, noted another warrior, a young male named Krellel, more than we control through diplomacy and trade. Craxus said, not looking up from his pad. Not conquest. The galaxy sees them as merchants and explorers, not warriors. Then why do we seek alliance with merchants? Krellel asked. Craxus finally looked up. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim light. Because merchants who control 43 systems must have something we have not yet seen. Tomorrow we watch closely. We learn at 6:30 hours by the ship's time. Craxus woke the others. They dressed in lighter armor, more appropriate for diplomatic meetings, but still impressive and intimidating. They carried fewer weapons, but ensured those they had were visible. As they walked through the corridors toward the observation deck, they heard a strange sound. It was rhythmic and loud, coming from a large room with an open door. Craxus paused and looked inside. He froze. The room was full of equipment, machines for physical exercise, weights made of metal, bars for pulling oneself up, platforms for running, and using. All of this equipment were humans, at least 20 of them, moving and sweating and breathing hard. Engineer Dongwu lay on a bench, pushing a heavy bar up and down above his chest. Craxus's eyes widened as he calculated the weight. Those metal plates on the bar, that was at least 150 kg, maybe more. Dongwu pushed it up and down steadily, his breathing controlled. He completed 10 repetitions, then added more weight and continued. Impossible, whispered Thexer beside Craxus. That much weight would require 3 of our warriors working together. Pilot G1 hung from a bar, pulling herself up until her chin passed it, then lowering herself down, up and down, up and down. Without stopping, Crax counted 20 pulls, 30, 40, 50. She kept going, and her face showed effort, but not pain, not struggle, just steady work. Around her, other humans ran on machines that moved beneath their feet faster and faster. Sweat poured down their faces. Medical officer Sububin, the older woman with gray hair they had met yesterday, ran on one of these machines. The display showed her speed. Craxus converted it to familiar measurements and felt his stomach tighten. She was running at 30 km/h. That was cavalry charge speed. That was the speed Valoran warriors used when attacking, and she had been doing it. For he checked the timer, 45 minutes. Already, what are they doing? Krellel asked, his voice full of confusion and worry. Exercise, Tammond's voice came. From behind them, the Valorans turned. Quickly, hands moving toward weapons by instinct, but Tammond just smiled and held up his hands peacefully. Sorry. Didn't mean to startle you, you're Jim. Craxus repeated the unfamiliar word. Exercise room, Tammond explained. Most of the crew works out in the morning, keeps them healthy and strong. Navy regulations require at least 1 hour of physical training per day. Most people do more because it feels good. This is required. Thexer asked, all of your warriors must do this? Well, we're not really warriors, Tammond said casually. I mean, we're military, but most of us are support staff, engineers, medical personnel, navigation specialists. The actual combat troops train much harder than this. The Valorans exchanged glances. These were not warriors, these were support staff, engineers, and doctors. And they lifted weights that would challenge elite Valoran soldiers. They ran at speeds reserved for battle. Charges, how long do they exercise? Craxus asked carefully. Oh, this morning. Crews started about an hour ago. They'll go for another 30 minutes or so, then shower and come to breakfast. Some people prefer evening workouts. Instead, personal choice really. Inside the gym, Dongwu finished his set and sat up. He noticed the Valorans watching and waved cheerfully. Good morning. You're the Valoran delegation, right? Welcome aboard. Sorry I can't shake hands right now, pretty sweaty. G1 dropped from her pull-up bar. Craxus counted in his head. She had done 105 pulls before stopping. Morning. Commander, she called to Tam, we still on schedule for breakfast? Absolutely. Tammond confirmed. Perfect. I'm starving. G1 grabbed a bottle of water and drank deeply, then headed toward what Craxus assumed were the shower rooms. She's hungry, Thexer said quietly, after all that exercise. Of course, Tammond said, sounding surprised by the question. Exercise makes you hungry. The body needs fuel to recover. Come on, let me show you to the observation deck. We've got a beautiful view of the nebula from there. And the kitchen staff have been preparing breakfast since 50. They've really outdone themselves. As they walked, Craxus's mind raced. In Valorian culture, warriors consumed small amounts of nutrient paste before battle. It provided energy without making them sluggish. Large meals came after victory, not before exertion. Yet these humans exercised intensely, then planned to eat. The order seemed backward. Observation deck was a large room with windows showing the stars and the colorful clouds of the nearby nebula. But Craxus barely noticed the view. His attention was fixed on the tables. There were 6 long tables arranged in the room, and on every table sat food. Mountains of food, platters piled high with cooked meats, bowls full of eggs, stacks of bread, containers of fruits, and vegetables in colors Cries had never seen, jugs of drinks, plates, and utensils for each person. The smell hit him next, rich and strong. The scent of cooked food filled the air. It was not unpleasant, but it was overwhelming in its abundance. Is this a feast? Krello asked, his voice filled with awe. Are you celebrating a victory? Thame looked confused. Victory? No, this is breakfast. Like I said yesterday, we always eat together in the morning. Well, those of us on the day shift, the night crew, had their meals 6 hours ago. This is standard? Craxus asked, unable to keep the disbelief from his voice. Actually, we went a bit lighter today. Because of the diplomatic session, Tammin said apologetically. Usually we have more variety, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with too many Earth dishes at once. The Valorans sat at one of the tables. The chairs were human-sized, making the large aliens feel cramped. They looked at the food in front of them. Each place setting had an empty plate, and the serving platters were within reach of everyone. Crew members began arriving. They came in small groups, talking and laughing. Their hair was still wet from showers after their exercise. They wore clean uniforms and looked relaxed and happy. They greeted the Valorans politely as they sat down at the various tables, but without fear or excessive formality. Dongwu sat across from Craxus. "Hope you like the food," he said cheerfully. "Our head cook, her name is Young Suk. She's amazing, been cooking for the Navy for 20 years. She can make anything taste good, even the recycled protein we have to use sometimes in deep space." One Gi sat next to Dongwu. Subin joined them along with Young, Han Wu, and several others whose names Craxus had not learned yet. Tammin and Hana sat at the head of the table. "All right, everyone," Tammin announced. "Let an LT Hunk and GTS eat. And remember, our guests might not be familiar with all our food, so feel free to explain if they ask." The humans began serving themselves, and the Valorans watched in growing disbelief as their entire understanding of human physiology began to crumble. Jaeyoung reached for the platter of eggs first. He was a young man, thin and tall, who worked in communications. He looked like what the Valorian reports had described: soft, weak, not a warrior. He took 6 eggs and put them on his plate. Craxus watched carefully, thinking this would be the young human's entire meal. 6 eggs seemed like a reasonable amount for a being of his size, perhaps with some of that bread. But Jae-sung did not stop. Next came meat, thick slices of what Tammin had called bacon, and other cuts that Craxus did not recognize. Young took enough meat to fill half his plate. The meat alone weighed perhaps half a kilogram. Then rice, a full bowl of white rice. That could have fed a Valoran family. Then vegetables, then bread, then something called pancakes with sweet syrup poured over them. The plate was full, overflowing. Young picked up his utensils and began eating at a steady, casual pace, as if this was completely normal. Craxus looked at the other humans. They were all doing the same thing. Minko, the navigator, was a small woman. She stood perhaps 160 cm tall and looked delicate. She took 4 eggs, meat, a mountain of rice, fruit, bread. Her plate held portions that would sustain a Valoran warrior for 3 full days. She ate with neat, precise movements, talking between bites with the person next to her about navigation calculations. Dong Wu finished his first plate in approximately 8 minutes. Craxus timed it, unable to believe what he was seeing. The engineer had consumed enough food to power a Valorian soldier through an entire battle, and Dong Wu was standing up, going back to the serving tables for more. "Not hungry?" Hana asked, noticing that Craxus had not touched his plate. We do not eat before important meetings," Craxus said, which was true. Valoran warriors fasted before crucial negotiations to keep their minds sharp. "It is our custom." "Oh, I understand," Hana said kindly. "Everyone has different traditions, but please try something if you'd like." Young Suk will be sad if our guests don't taste anything. Thexer, sitting beside Craxus, reached out slowly and took one egg. She cut it carefully with a knife and put a small piece in her mouth. Her eyes widened slightly. It is good, she said, sounding surprised. Of course it is, Dong Wu said, returning to the table with his second plate. This one was as full as his first. Young Suk is the best. Hey, you should try the bacon. It's real pig meat, not synthesized. We picked up fresh supplies at Station 7 last week. Krello took a small piece of the bacon. Then another. The Valorans had not eaten real meat in months on their warships. Everything was nutrient-paste, designed for efficiency. This actual flesh, cooked and seasoned, was a rare luxury. But even as they tried small portions, they kept watching the humans eat and eat and eat. Hun Wu, the security chief, was on his third plate. He was a big man, by human standards, with broad shoulders and thick arms, but even small Ji-1 was on her second full serving. Subin, the medical officer who had to be past 50 years old, ate steadily through portions that seemed impossible for someone her age. Is everyone very hungry today? Thexer asked carefully, trying to understand. Did you not eat yesterday? The humans looked at each other and laughed. It was not mocking laughter, just genuine amusement at the question. We eat like this every day, Ji-1 explained. 3 main meals plus snacks. If we're active, the human body burns a lot of energy. We need constant fuel. But you are small, Krello said, then quickly added, I mean no offense, I only mean to say your bodies are smaller than ours. How can you need so much food? Higher metabolism, Subin explained. In her calm medical voice, human bodies run hot and fast. Our heart rates are higher than most species. Our cells burn energy constantly, even at rest and when we're active. She gestured at the gym they had passed earlier. We need even more fuel to maintain and build muscle. This is a normal amount, Craxus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. For civilians. For support staff, well, military clears throat. Personnel eat more than civilians. Tammin said, we have higher physical requirements, but yes, this is pretty standard. Though I'll admit, soldiers in active combat zones eat significantly more. Hard physical work requires serious fuel. Craxus did calculations in his head. If these 12 humans consumed this much for breakfast and they ate 3 times per day plus snacks, the amount of food resources required to maintain a human military force would be staggering. The Valoran Empire fed its warriors efficiently. Nutrient paste was cheap and easy to produce, but humans needed real food, variety, quantity. How could they afford it? How could they supply armies across 43 systems? How do you transport enough food for your soldiers? He asked bluntly. We grow most of it on the ships and stations, Dong Wu said, chewing on a piece of bread. Hydroponics, mostly some protein synthesis, though people prefer real meat when we can get it. Each colony world has massive agricultural operations. Earth itself is basically one giant farm and city planet. Now we learned early that if we wanted to expand into space, we needed to master food production. And your civilians? Thier asked. They eat the same amounts. Quote, more or less, Jung said. Kids eat more when they're growing. Teenagers eat constantly, like all the time. It's actually kind of scary how much a teenager can consume. My little brother back on Earth, he's 16, and my parents say the food budget doubled when he hit puberty. The Valorans absorbed this information in stunned silence. Human children ate more than adults. Growing humans needed even greater quantities of food. What about your warriors? Craxus asked. Your actual combat troops. How much do they consume? Craxus. Oh, way more than this, Hun Wu said. Casually, I used to be in the Marines. Before I transferred to ship security. During training, we'd eat maybe 5 or 6 meals a day, big meals. When you're carrying 40 kg of gear and running 20 km and then doing combat drills, your body just burns through everything. 5 or 6 meals per day. Each meal this size or larger. Craxus felt his understanding of human military logistics shatter completely. But how? Krell started, then stopped, unsure how to ask politely. How do we afford it? Tam guessed. He smiled. It's a fair question. The truth is, humans had to become very, very good at growing food. Earth's population hit 12 billion before we expanded into space. We were facing food shortages. That's actually one of the main reasons we pushed so hard for colonization. We needed more room to grow food. Now every human world has agriculture as its primary or secondary industry. We export food to dozens of other species. Number you feed other species? Dexter asked. Surprised, Shormio said. The Helios buy grain from us. The Denari love earth. Vegetables, even the CRH, though their biology is totally different from ours. They import certain proteins we produce. It's one of our biggest trade goods, actually, food and agricultural technology. The picture became clearer. To Craxus, humans were not warriors. They were farmers who had learned to feed billions of their own kind. And in doing so had become essential to dozens of other species. But to feed themselves, they had evolved bodies that required constant fuel, bodies that could process enormous amounts of food and convert it to energy and strength, which explained the gym, the exercise, the casual display of physical power that would shame many warrior races. Commander Tammin, Craxus said formally, I must ask a direct question. Your people evolved on a standard planet. According to our information, normal gravity, normal atmosphere. Nothing exceptional, yet your physical capabilities seem to exceed this. Why? Tammin set down his utensils. He looked at Craxus with eyes that suddenly seemed much older and more knowing than before. Wararkeef, he said quietly, our information about your people says you evolved on a low-gravity world with thin atmosphere, that you enhanced yourselves through training and genetic modification to become warriors. Is this true? It is, Craxus confirmed. Then you chose to be warriors. You made yourselves into what you needed to be. Tammin picked up his cup of coffee and drank. Humans didn't get a choice. Earth made us into what we are. And Earth is not a gentle world. The room had gone quiet. All the humans had stopped eating. They were listening to their commander explain something they all knew but perhaps had never put into words quite like this. You'll learn more as we continue our talks, Tam said. But yes, Warchief, everything you've seen this morning is normal. This is what humans are. This is what Earth created. And this, he gestured at the tables full of food, this is just breakfast. After breakfast, Tammin suggested a tour of the ship before their formal negotiations began. The Valorans agreed, though Craxus suspected the commander had reasons beyond simple courtesy. Everything humans did seem to have layers of meaning beneath the surface. They walked through the corridors of the Times Eternal Dawn asterisk crew. Members passed by going about their duties. A young woman named Bo-Ra, introduced as the research officer, joined them. She was enthusiastic and talkative, eager to explain how the ship worked. "This is our hydroponic section," she said, gesturing to a large room full of plants growing under artificial lights. "We grow about 40% of our fresh food right here on the ship. Vegetables, fruits, some grains. The rest comes from synthesizers or our supply runs." The room was huge. Row after row of plants in various stages of growth. The Valorans walked between them, seeing carrots and lettuce and tomatoes and dozens of other species they did not recognize. "This is just for one ship," Thexer asked. "How many people are aboard?" 320. Bora answered cheerfully. "Plus you 5 now, so 325. Total 325 people, requiring the food they had seen at breakfast 3 times per day plus snacks." The math was staggering. "Your supply chains must be very complex," Craxus observed. "Oh, incredibly complex," Bora agreed. "Food logistics is actually one of the biggest challenges in human space exploration. When we first started colonizing other worlds, we lost several colonies because we couldn't get food to them fast enough or grow it locally. We learned a lot from those failures. Now every colony ship carries enough agricultural equipment and genetic seed stock to start feeding itself within the first year." They moved on to the medical bay. Subin was there working at a computer console. She looked up and smiled. "Commander Wararkeef, welcome to my domain." Dr. Subin was just finishing her post-exercise physical check. Tammin explained. "Standard procedure after morning training. You examine your crew every day?" Krello asked, surprised. "Not full examination," Subin said. "Just basic monitoring, heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, that sort of thing. Human bodies are very good at adapting to stress, but we need to make sure we're not pushing too hard, especially in space where gravity is artificial and the environment is controlled." She pulled up a display screen showing charts and numbers. For example, look at G1's data from this morning. She ran for 60 minutes at high speed. Her heart rate peaked at 185 beats per minute, very healthy for her age and fitness level. Her body temperature rose to 38.6 degrees, which is normal during intense exercise. Her oxygen consumption increased by a factor of 8 times normal, Dexter said. "That seems extreme. That's what exercise is," Subin explained patiently. "Controlled stress on the body. We push ourselves, our bodies adapt, we become stronger. Human bodies are designed for this. We're endurance specialists. Our ancestors on Earth would hunt animals by chasing them until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, sometimes for days without stopping." "Days," Krello repeated, "without rest." "Well, they probably rested at night," Bora said, joining the conversation. "But yes, persistence hunting was a major human strategy for tens of thousands of years. We can't run as fast as most prey animals, but we can run longer, much longer. Our bodies have cooling systems, sweat, that let us regulate temperature. While running, most animals overheat and have to stop. Humans just keep going." Craxus thought about the implications. A species that evolved to run prey to death, that could move continuously for days, that ate enormous amounts to fuel These activities, these were not passive. Merchants, these were predators who had learned to wear suits and build ships. Wararkeef Subban said, noticing his expression. You seem troubled, may I ask? What concerns you? Graz considered his words carefully. Doctor, I am trying to understand. Your reports say humans evolved on a planet with standard conditions, but everything I have seen suggest otherwise. The food consumption, the physical capabilities, the endurance, these things do not match. A standard world. Subban and Bora exchanged glances, then Subban nodded. Slowly, standard by whose measurement? She asked gently. Wararkeef, the galaxy uses a baseline. For comparison, that baseline is an average of the most common habitable worlds, but who decided what was average? The Galactic Council. Craxus said based on the first 50 species to achieve spaceflight. Exactly, Bora said. 50 species out of thousands, and of those 50, how many were predators? Craxus thought perhaps 10. Most species that achieve advanced civilization are herbivores or omnivores, with mostly plant-based diets, right? Bora continued, most species evolved on worlds where food was abundant and threats were minimal, nice, comfortable. Planets where cooperation and intelligence were enough to survive, but Earth, she paused, Earth was different. Subban pulled up another screen. This one showed an image of Earth from space. Blue and green and white, beautiful and serene. This is our home, Subban said. And it tried to kill us at every opportunity. She changed the image. Now it showed various scenes from Earth. Storms with winds strong enough to flatten buildings, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes spewing molten rock, floods that swallowed entire valleys, animals with teeth and claws hunting in the darkness. Earth has weather, Bora explained, real weather. Not the gentle rains on most habitable worlds. We have hurricanes and tornadoes, and blizzards and droughts. We have tectonic activity that causes earthquakes and volcanoes. We have extreme temperature variations. At the equator, it can be 45 degrees during the day. At the poles, it can be -50. That's a range of nearly 100 degrees on a single planet. And the gravity, Thexer asked quietly, 1.3 times galactic standard. Subban confirmed, which means every human is born carrying 30% more weight than beings on standard worlds. Our bones grow denser to compensate. Our muscles develop stronger just to move our own bodies. When we travel to standard gravity worlds, we feel lighter, stronger, faster. We having that radar, we having part of it's the pieces fell into place in Craxus's mind. Humans didn't look physically imposing because they had evolved in a high-gravity environment where simply moving required strength. The exercise regime made sense now. They were maintaining the capabilities they needed on their home world. And the oxygen, he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Higher concentration than standard, Bora said. Earth's atmosphere is about 21% oxygen. Galactic standard is closer to 16%. So our bodies are used to processing more oxygen, which means more energy, which means we need more fuel. The food, Craxus said. The food, Subban agreed. Humans evolved on a high-gravity, high-oxygen world full of dangers. To survive, we needed to be strong, fast, and capable of running for days to catch food or escape predators. Our bodies are biological engines designed for endurance, and engines need Fuel. Tammin had been quiet during this exchange. Now he spoke. Wararkeef, you asked earlier if this was standard for all humans. The answer is yes, every human. Man, woman, and child, we're all built this way because Earth demanded it. We didn't choose to be this strong or need this much food or be able to run until our prey collapsed. Evolution chose for us. Your children, Krello said suddenly. You said they eat more during growth spurts. Yes, Subin confirmed. A teenage human boy can consume 5,000 or more calories per day and still be hungry. Their bodies are building muscle and bone at incredible rates. Human children are also remarkable resilient. They fall, they break bones, and they heal quickly. They have to, on Earth. Childhood was dangerous. Bora pulled up another image. This one showed predators from Earth: lions, bears, wolves, crocodiles, sharks. These were our neighbors, she said. Every one of these animals could kill a human easily, and there were thousands more venomous snakes, poisonous insects, parasites, bacteria, and viruses that could kill in days. Earth was actively trying to eliminate us at every moment. How did your species survive? Thexer asked. Without natural weapons or armor. Tools, Tammin said, and cooperation. And intelligence and sheer stubbornness. We learned to make weapons from stone and wood. We learned to work together in groups. We learned to think and plan and adapt, but most importantly, we learned to never ever give up. The galaxy thinks of humans as peaceful explorers and merchants. Kraxus said slowly, but you are not, are you? We are those things, Tammin said firmly. We prefer peace, we prefer trade, but we come from a world that tested us every single day for millions of years, a world that made us strong. Whether we wanted to be or not, we're peaceful now because we choose to be, not because we have to be. The Valoran warriors stood in silence, processing this information. Their intelligence reports had been wrong, catastrophically wrong. Humans were not weak merchants protected by technology. They were survivors from a death world who had learned to build ships and make friends, and they had done it all while eating breakfast. The formal negotiations began at 1,000 hours. In the conference room, it was a smaller, more private space with a large table and comfortable chairs. Tammin sat on one side with Hana. Kraxus and Thexer sat across from them. The other Valorans waited outside, as did most of the human crew, but Kraxus found it hard to focus on the diplomatic protocols and trade agreements that Tam was discussing. His mind kept returning to the breakfast, to the gym, to Subin's explanations about Earth. Commander, he interrupted, perhaps more abruptly than was polite. I must speak plainly. Tam Min stopped mid-sentence and nodded. Of course. Wararkeef, please. Kraxus gathered his thoughts. The Valorian Empire has conquered 17 systems. We have done that through superior military strength and warrior discipline. Our soldiers train from birth. They undergo genetic enhancements. They follow strict physical and dietary protocols designed to create the perfect warrior, and yet he gestured broadly, indicating the ship around them. Your civilians casually exceed their capabilities. I wouldn't say casually. Tammin said carefully. Our crew works hard to maintain their fitness, but they are not enhanced. Kraxus pressed. They are natural humans born as they are, without modification. That's correct. And the exercise this morning, the food consumption, this is standard across your entire species. Yes, Craxus leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. Then, our intelligence reports were very, very wrong about humanity. What did your reports say? Hana asked curiously. Dexter answered. They said humans were technologically advanced but physically weak. That you achieve space flight through intelligence and cooperation, not strength. That your military victories were due to superior weapons and tactics, not warrior capability. That you held 43 systems through diplomacy and trade, not force. All of that is true, Tammin said. We are technologically advanced. We do prefer diplomacy. We did achieve space flight through cooperation, but you are not weak, Craxus said flatly. No. Tammin agreed. We're not weak, but we're not trying to be strong either. We're just human. This is normal for us. Craxus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars shone against the black of space. The nebula glowed in the distance, beautiful and cold. There is a battle in our history, he said quietly. The Battle of Proxima Ridge. 3 years ago, a Valoran force was moving through contested space. We encountered a human military unit. The report said the humans ran. They retreated and we pursued, confident in victory. We chased them for 3 days across rough terrain. Tammin's expression changed slightly. I know that battle. After 3 days our warriors were exhausted, Craxus continued. We needed rest. We made camp. And then the humans attacked. They had not been retreating. They had been leading us away from our supply lines. And while we were tired, they were still fresh. They ran for 3 days without stopping, then fought a battle and won. The 47th Infantry Division, Tammin said. I knew their commander. Good man. He retired last year. Regular infantry. Craxus turned to face him. Not special forces, not enhanced soldiers. Regular human infantry did what our best warriors could not. They ran for 3 days and then fought. Humans are endurance specialists, Hana said gently. It's what we do. It's what Earth made us to do. Dexter spoke up. How many battles like that have there been? How many times have other species underestimated humanity? Tammin and Hana exchanged glances. A few times, Tam admitted. Most species see us and think we're not dangerous. Small, soft, only 2 arms, no natural weapons. They think our ships and weapons are our only advantages. And then Craxus asked, and then they learn differently. Tammin said simply, usually without anyone dying. Thankfully we're good at de-escalation. But yes, when necessary, humans fight. And when humans fight, we bring everything Earth gave us. Craxus returned to his seat. He looked at Tammin with new understanding. The Alliance, the Valoran Empire, came here to assess whether humanity would be a worthy ally or a potential threat. We thought we were negotiating with merchants and explorers. You are, Tammin assured him. That's what we choose to be, but we understand now what you're really asking. You want to know what humanity is capable of when pushed. Yes. Tammin was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up a display screen showing a star map. It showed human space, 43 systems, each marked with a dot. Lines connected them, showing trade routes and communication networks. War Archive. Every one of these systems has at least one habitable world. Some have 3 or 4. Do you know how many of these worlds were classified as easy to colonize by galactic standards? Craxus studied the map. I do not. 7. Tammin said 7 worlds out of 53 total. The Rest were classified as difficult or extremely difficult, high gravity, thin atmospheres, extreme temperatures, dangerous local life. Other species looked at these worlds and said, no, too hard, not worth it, but humans said yes. Dexter observed. We said yes, Tamman confirmed. Because to us, they weren't that bad. After Earth, most worlds seem easy. We can breathe thinner air because we're used to high oxygen. We can handle higher gravity because that's our normal. We can survive temperature extremes because Earth taught us how. And dangerous local life, he smiled slightly. Earth's life would eat most other planets' life. For lunch, Hana pulled up another image. This is colony world Sejong 4. Gravity is 1.5 times standard. Atmosphere is thin. Temperature swings 60 degrees between day and night. The local predators are 3 m tall and hunt in packs. No other species even tried to colonize it. How many humans live there? Craxus asked. 2 million. Hana answered. And growing. They have farms, cities, industry. Children are born there, grow up there, and thrive. Because it's not that different from Earth. It's just home. The picture was becoming complete in Craxus' mind. Humanity had not expanded through conquest. They had expanded by simply going to places no one else wanted and making them livable. They had turned impossible worlds into homes, and they had done it by being exactly what Earth had made them: strong, enduring, adaptable, stubborn. We seek alliance with you, Craxus said formally. The Valoran Empire would be honored to call humanity friend rather than risk you as enemy. We're an LT Unk and GT, happy to be friends. Tamman said warmly, we prefer it that way, but I appreciate your honesty. War Arkeef, and I want to be honest with you in return. Humanity is peaceful by choice. We've seen enough war on Earth to last 1,000,000 years. We'd rather build than destroy. But if someone threatens our worlds, our people, our children, his expression hardened slightly. Earth made us survivors first, and everything else second. I understand, Craxus said, and he did. Finally, he truly understood. Thexer had one more question. Commander, earlier you said this breakfast was light. You said soldiers eat more during operations. How much more? Tamman thought about it. Active combat troops in the field typically consume 6,000 to 8,000 calories per day, sometimes more if they're operating in extreme conditions. Cold weather operations can require 10,000 calories or more to maintain body heat and energy. The Valoran warriors absorb this silently. A single human soldier consumed as much food as 5 Valoran warriors. The logistical challenge of feeding a human army was almost unimaginable, but we make it work, Hana added, seeing their expressions. Humans are very, very good at agriculture and food production. We have to be. It's one of the first things we mastered as a species. Craxus stood and extended his hand in the human gesture. Tamman rose and took it. They shook in this time. Craxus was prepared for the strength in the human's grip, to friendship between our peoples, Craxus said formally, and to the hope that we never have to face human warriors in battle. To friendship, Tamman agreed, and to peace. Always to peace first. They spent the rest of the day discussing trade agreements, military cooperation, protocols, and cultural exchange programs. The negotiations went smoothly. The Valorans were ready to agree to almost anything humanity proposed, now that they understood what they were dealing with as the Valoran delegation prepared to return to their ship that evening. Krellel approached Jung quietly. "I have a question," the young Valoran warrior said. "A personal question. You mentioned meals earlier. You said there was breakfast and other meals." "Oh, sure," Jung said cheerfully. "After breakfast comes second breakfast. Then lunch around noon, afternoon snack, dinner and evening snack if you're still hungry, second breakfast." Krellel repeated slowly. "There is a meal called second breakfast sometimes," Jung confirmed, "if you're really active or didn't eat enough at first breakfast. Not everyone eats second breakfast, but it's pretty common." Krellel walked back to Kraxus and reported this in their own language. The Wararchief nodded slowly, as if this confirmed everything he had learned. Later, as the Times Crimson Fang Times pulled away from the Times Eternal Dawn asterisk, Kraxus stood in his command center and looked at the human ship. It was small and plain, with no weapons visible on its exterior. It looked harmless, but Kraxus knew better. Now, inside that ship were humans, beings from a world that tested them every day, a world that made space seem gentle by comparison. They ate like warriors preparing for battle every single morning. They exercised to maintain strength they needed just to exist. They had spread across hostile worlds because those worlds reminded them of home. The Valorans had conquered 17 systems through military might and warrior tradition. They had been proud of this achievement, but humanity had colonized 43 systems by simply being able to survive in places where survival should have been impossible. They had done it without conquest, without war, just by being what Earth had forged them to be. Starforged. The name made sense now. They were not forged for the stars. They were forged by a world that made the stars seem merciful, and they had carried that strength with them into space, hidden behind friendly smiles and diplomatic courtesy and breakfast tables. "Set course for home," Kraxus commanded, "and send a message to the Emperor. Tell him we have secured the alliance with humanity. Tell him we were very, very wrong about them. And tell him he..." Paused, thinking of Dongwu casually, lifting weights that would challenge 3 Valoran warriors of G1 running at cavalry charge speeds for an hour, of Taman's grip that spoke of casual, effortless strength. Tell him we should be grateful they prefer peace, because if humanity ever truly went to war, the galaxy would learn what it means to face survivors from a death world, and they call what they did this morning breakfast. The Times Crimson Fang Times jumped to faster than light travel, carrying Valoran warriors who now understood what the rest of the galaxy was slowly learning. Humanity was not strong despite coming from Earth. Humanity was strong because of it.